I think this discussion is extremely important today, bringing together all the left and activists coming together to discuss, to bring about permanent change for the working class and the poor. And to us, the factors that brings us together in discussion today is not only about that has to do with the political crisis that we're facing and the economic crisis that we're facing, but also an urgency to build an alternative politics, where what we are seeing in Malaysia at this moment of time, there's a crisis of left politics that needs to be built again, as though it needs to be rebuilt again after UMNO has fallen. I stop here and I will pass to Comrade Yuval to continue our discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for everybody to taking time off in this on your holiday, Sunday, to come to have such an important discussion at such a crucial point in Malaysian history. Not only in Malaysian history, we could also say that the global geopolitical situation is at a kind of a tense, critical moment at this time, with the war developing in Iran and all that. So basically, I mean, we will be looking at our local political movement, little bit of history, and we want to see where it is heading. Basically, I mean, I'm sure those from Malaysia, you have heard this phrase, reformasi sudah mati, reformasi is dead. Maybe I should explain what they mean by that, and why this such a term came about, and what is the implication of it. When did Reformasi die, and who killed it is a question. When did it start, for example? We have to analyze this important question to understand what are they talking about when they say Reformasi is dead. First of all, who is saying this? The liberal media is saying this, right? The mainstream media is saying this. It's not that the left is saying. The left, for example, has been saying different things. We will go and look into it in this coming discussion. But the liberal media has claimed that the Reformasi movement, led by Anwar, led by the current Prime Minister and his political allies, has basically died, has basically failed. This declaration was made, I believe, back in early in the PH administration. Basically, when Anwar was cozying up with the Barisan Nasional leader Zaid Hamidi, and it is very clear Anwar had a hand in releasing Zaid Hamidi from corruption cases. I mean, if the participants here are not familiar with this, maybe Ray from Indonesia and Hito from Thailand not familiar. Zaid Hamidi is a leader of a Barisan Nasional. Barisan Nasional is one of the longest ruling coalition, which is basically they got defeated back in 2018 by this reformist group. So Zaid Hamidi is the leader. He took over from Najib after Najib failed to defend the government. Basically, the state collapsed to Pakatan Harapan, and Zaid became the leader. So Zaid, I mean Najib, I'm sure everyone have heard, he's like the corruption king. His wife Rosma is like some kind of resembles resembles these stories of this corrupt political leader and their wife who are buying all sorts of Hermes goods and all sorts of luxury goods and just spending people's money. Najib is that kind of figure. Many say that Zaid is even worse than him, right? He's even more entrenched in the corruption, and he's even more entrenched in the UMNO political system. And Anwar has seemed to be helping Zaid, and that has caused a lot of the liberals to wake up and say, hey, this is not reform, you're defending the corruptor. I mean, you came to power by claiming that you're going to fight corruption, and once now you're in the power, you have changed tune just for political expediency, just to secure your position. So many have started sounding the alarm, but now since Rafizi, now if you want to know that the Pakatan Harapan main party, which is PKR, Anwar is the leader of the party. PKR is in disarray now. They are broken. Like there's an internal conflict, internal fight, and this Rafizi has come out and declared that the Reformasi movement led by Anwar is dead. Now he is the true representative of the Reformasi movement. Now he is going to start a new party and going to really going to represent the movement. So the question arises, of course, can we believe Rafizi one more time? Is it like, I mean, a lot of even liberal pundits are already saying that this is just same script. It's just the same story. It's going to be Pakatan Harapan 2.0 with more of rhetoric to help the people. But once they get the power, it's the same story. So this is kind of a pessimism has kind of set in Malaysian politics at this point of time. And basically what we are here, I mean, we are being a little bit sneaky here. We also want to introduce our organization, because our organization also, Sosialis Alternatif, have got something to do with the Reformasi movement, the liberal reformist camp, and the attitude of left towards the Reformasi movement. So basically we, Sosialis Alternatif to be precise, we were not very surprised by the betrayals of Anwar. We were not very surprised by the betrayals of Nurul Izzah, or even Rafizi Ramli when he was in the power, when he was slated to be the next in command in PKR. He was completely silent of all the corruption that was happening inside his party. And basically we, Sosialis Alternatif, have said from the beginning that do not put your trust in these liberal reformists. It's not only is not going to help the progress of our political development, the progress of our society, it will in fact create a political vacuum, create disappointment among the masses, and create a big political vacuum where now the political vacuum can be filled by right-wing demagogues and start to polarize the society and use racism and other forms of divisive tactics to try to divide us. So we are leaving, basically, by supporting the liberal reformists, we are leaving the political field to be open to other right-wing forces. So that is what we've been saying from the beginning. And I will come back to this later in my lead off. Just to point out, we, in fact, the creation of Sosialis Alternatif is because of the position of the characterization of the whole reformist camp against other left currents which existed. So I will explain a little bit further about this. And first of all, before we go further into this, I've already said that we have kind of predicted that this is going to happen back in the day, back in 2008, 2009. And as a proof, I brought this booklet. We have printed this booklet recently, but the contents of this booklet is from 2009. So this booklet, the first part of the booklet is a critique of Dr. Jayakumar, PSM leader, of Dr. Jayakumar's book, Malaysia at the Crossroads. So in this booklet is very clearly, we have spelled out our strategy for the coming time against the reformist current and what we should do in Malaysia. So if anybody were to doubt that we are just coming to this perspective now after the failure of reformism, please go and read all of our articles from 2009 to now. We have been consistently saying this despite being attacked repeatedly, being called a spoiler, being called a supporter of BN, all sort of things. We have defended our perspective and our position. So we urge all of the participants here to get a copy, try to check it out, and try to see where we are coming at. But before that, we want to explain another important thing here. The reason we could predict, right, the reason we could see through the liberal reformist rhetorics, and we can understand that this is going to happen, is not because we are some kind of prophets, not because we have some kind of magical power to see the future, right? We do not have that power. What we have is Marxism. We have a method. We have a method to analyze the movement of society. We have an approach where we look at history and we try to look at the history to try to predict how the movement in the future is going to be. You cannot divorce yourself from history. If you want to understand what's going to happen in the future, you got to look at what happened in the past. So this is one of the methods of Marxism. Also, you have to look at the interconnectedness of things, how Malaysian politics is connected to the regional politics, how the regional politics is connected to the global politics. So this kind of method of analysis is important. It's what led us, it's what gave us the clarity to see through all sorts of confusion and come up and draw out the conclusions, the reasonable logical conclusions, given the time, given the challenge we had, what we should do. That's how we put forward the perspective. So having said that, there is no escape, comrades, that we have to look into the history of the formation of Malaysia itself. Unfortunately, we don't have time now to go into the details. So what I will do now is to just fast forward, very fast, very briefly. I'll try to explain the Malaysian historical movement of how and why the reformist current come to be. I mean, the reformist current just born in late 90s, and I'll try to explain and connect it all the way to 90, from the independence to all the way to 90. Actually, pre-independent Malaysian politics is also extremely important. We have no time to go there, but we do have certain books. I mean, not a book, we do have a booklet. This is May 13. We produced it a couple of years ago during the 55th anniversary of May 13. So for those who don't know, during the May 13, there was a race riot in Malaysia. It's kind of a flashpoint, a significant flashpoint in Malaysia, which kind of formed our politics after 69. And also this 69 addresses the politics of Malaysia before. So this is one of the a very simple booklet you can go through very fast, explains basically what happened. So I don't have time to go through now. I also urge comrades, please get this, try to read. Well, unfortunately, we only have a Malay version, Chinese version now. English version is out of stock, but do let us know, we can get it done for you. So because of that, I introduced the book, because I got no time, but very briefly, right, just touch on it. Malaysian politics, Malaysian nation state building project, I can call it, is done, during the independence in the 50s, 57 was our independence. But before the independence, there were like 10 years of, what do you call that? Darurat is emergency ordinance, right? There's an emergency in Malaysia. Before that, the emergency was about battling with the trade unions and the working class and the left, we call it left movement that existed, pro-independent movement which existed pre-independent of Malaysia, and that scared the British colonialist masters and also scared the right-wing demagogues and the monarchists and the, all the UMNO people. They scared them, and they collaborated with British, and they basically killed off the left in using an emergency, using military might, using propaganda, all sorts of propaganda, racist propaganda, right? They used racist propaganda to divide the urban proletariat movement, the working class movement, which was led by all sorts of race and religion and ethnicity, and they used the rhetoric and propaganda to the rural population, the Malay population, to create a racial division. But also the left has a lot to blame for this, because the left didn't provide a clear program to unite the masses under class. So that's another story, but this is what happened. The left was destroyed, and after 1957, basically, Perikatan, which is the old name of UMNO, took power of the state and also continued to collaborate with British to try to form our nation state. But they had a lot of issues at the beginning. They couldn't do it, not very easy. One of the main reason is that they can't do it like how they do it now, because now there's a clear Malay majority, right? It wasn't the case after the independence. There was a significant Chinese population in Malaysia. Most of them were considered in Singapore, but a significant Chinese population. So the Perikatan couldn't play the race game. They couldn't get the absolute power of the parliament. So they did a few things. Very fast forward, confrontancy with Indonesia. They arrested a lot of left people. In 1963, they joined Sabah and Sarawak. British engineered this. Sabah and Sarawak became part of the Federation of Malaysia, which increased Bumiputra. They categorized the indigenous population of Sabah and Sarawak as Bumiputra, increased a Bumiputra majority, and finally in 1965, they cut off Singapore, right? A big chunk of population, they cut it off, and they engineered a kind of racial political system in Malaysia. So this is what I'm trying to explain. Of course, I don't have time to go in detail, but this is what comrades have to understand. that this was engineered, right, by UMNO. And the flashpoint, like I was talking, this created in a chaos, in a race riot in 1969. It's not really a race riot, it's kind of engineered from the top, but also we have no time to go into that. But what happened after 1969, May 13, is the formation of another emergency ordinance, and another emergency under what they call Mageran, Majlis Gerakan Nasional, Mageran. So Mageran, there's no parliament sitting. There's a bunch of bureaucrats who came together and start to take our constitution and start to engineer. As I say, they continue to engineer this racial dynamics, which is going to define the Malaysian politics. That is when they created or codified the Article 153 in the constitution. It is where they created this. They made the Malay special rights permanent at that time, because it was a temporary measure at the beginning. They made it permanent. They created a lot of institutions to control the citizens. They made a lot of political arrests. Or if you want to go and Wikipedia, Ops Lalang and all that, there's so many political arrests. Also, again, I will have to say, every time I will say this, that there was mistakes done by the left as well. They were not united. Like one of the biggest left at the beginning of a Malaysian formation were like PRM, Parti Rakyat Malaysia. There were Labour Party before, and there was a few other left organizations, left parties, organized themselves in what you call a Socialist Front, a political coalition. It was one of the most successful political coalition, and they had a lot of MPs and also had a tremendous success in local council elections, right? But because of the failure of the left to provide a clear program, especially about the language, which language is supposed to be the Malaysian language, for example, they were not skillful to navigate through the complexities of race and ethnicity, and they were unable to put forward a clear working class political alternative, right? They were still under some sort of social democratic framework at that time. So the point I'm trying to make is, before the Reformasi movement ever came about in the 90s, this was the original opposition to Barisan Nasional, the left, but the left was destroyed. And also after, I'm jumping a little bit, but after the Mageran, they destroyed the local council election. They made it very hard for small parties to participate in the election. So they managed to kind of consolidate the power. Barisan Nasional I'm talking about. They changed their name from Perikatan to UMNO. And they kind of basically aided by the economic growth. If you remember, in the 80s, Malaysia had so-called tiger economic growth, one of the countries in the world that has like this tremendous double-digit GDP growth every year. So aided by all this, basically BN has managed to clamp down on the opposition voices, including the left and the other liberal reformists, and basically they managed to hold on to the power for like 2 decades unopposed, pretty much 2/3 majority in parliament every time. Mahathir was so confident and everything. And this is one thing we have to understand, that because of the racial dynamics of our politics in Malaysia, many of the opposition, they start to argue that we have to defeat Barisan Nasional in order to make any kind of progress politically. But as long as Barisan Nasional is there, they will always use race, and they will always use the division among the masses, and they will create confusion, and they will always try to, they will always be dominant political force. Unless we defeat Barisan Nasional, we cannot really, progress further. That was the main narrative that came about in the 90s. And in 1997, this is another important flashpoint, another important economic marker of a Malaysian history, not only Malaysia, regionally. In 1997, there was this Asian financial crisis. Region-wide, Southeast Asia, they call it Tom Yang Gung crisis. Hito, maybe you know something, but you were not born yet. So it's a major crisis, right? 1997, which basically impacted the entire region, which was having some sort of like a crazy economic development before that. It kind of woke people up to the drunkenness, they were feeling because the crazy economic development with the GDP growth and all that. And 1997 basically revealed very important things. One of it is that the growth under capitalist system is unsustainable. Another thing is that the growth under capitalist system based on debt is basically built on a very shaky foundation. So any kind of small economic shock will bring the whole system down, and that's what happened. A few bankers like Soros and a few other bankers just went and made a lot of money in a very quick time, but they in the process they managed to tank the entire region's economy, and the entire region went into crisis, and that triggered a political crisis, right? In Thailand, there was a pro-democracy movement after that, after 97. In Indonesia, the dictator Suharto was overthrown. That was also called the Reformasi movement. In fact, the term Reformasi is coming from Indonesia to Malaysia. So the people were, in 1997, with the economic collapse, Barisan Nasional, after for decades of stability, finally felt some sort of, weakness. They finally start to lose control. They start to break internal fighting, and this is where Anwar was the deputy prime minister. He was slated to become the prime minister back then, and Anwar was fired from the party because of his disagreement about an economic policy between Mahathir and Anwar. There was a disagreement. Mahathir was going for capital control. I don't need to go into very detail, but Anwar was going for more liberalization according to IMF policies and all that. They fight, and Anwar was out. When Anwar was fired from the party, from UMNO, basically that became the basis of the formation of a strong opposition coalition in Malaysia from 1997. There was a few hiccups at the beginning, of course. First, at the beginning, all the opposition coalesced behind this new Anwar party, which they called the Justice Party, Parti Keadilan Nasional at that time. First of all the DAPs and all the other opposition, they coalesced behind them to form a very strong opposition coalition to fight Barisan Nasional, right? But they didn't do that well, and then slowly they start to bring in other forces. Even PAS was there since the beginning with the opposition coalition, and around 2000, 2003. Around there, this happened where all the entire left forces in Malaysia, whatever small left that was still there in Malaysia, who still surviving in Malaysia, everyone went into PKR. So I said just now, the Justice Party is PKN, Parti Keadilan Nasional. In 2003, they changed their name to Parti Keadilan Rakyat. Why they changed the name? Because PRM, Parti Rakyat Malaysia, which is supposed to be a left party, dissolved the left party and wholesale joined into the PKR, right? So that happened. Left parties dissolved their party to go into this reformist current, and that was happening in early 2000. But fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, PRM didn't die. Some of the people remaining there, they brought it to the court and they revived the party, so PRM is still there. But a lot of people from PRM, we are talking about current PKR politicians like Siva Rasa and many of the environmental activists, Elizabeth Wong, a lot of them, Latifa Koya, all of them from PRM, right? They joined PKR. So that happened, and somewhere in this time there was a formation of PSM, right? And this is important for us to discuss about PSM, because PSM didn't dissolve their party, or they didn't try to do that. They maintained an independent left organization, which is extremely commendable, right? During a difficult period of time, when there was pressure for you to dissolve your left and go into this reformist, PSM actually tried to organize it independently. The reason for that is also PSM is coming from PRM current, Parti Rakyat Malaysia. They are split from Parti Rakyat. In 1989, it's a bit backtracking a bit. In 1989, Parti Sosialis Rakyat Malaysia dropped their socialist, right? Because the Berlin Wall fell and all that, there's a lot of confusion. They dropped their socialist. They became Parti Rakyat Malaysia. The people who were socialists in Parti Rakyat Malaysia, they went and formed PSM later on. So PSM was existent because of Parti Rakyat Malaysia was becoming more center. So for the need to have a left party is what created PSM. But also an important caveat here, although PSM, not an important caveat, it's an important point here. Although PSM, yes, they didn't dissolve their party. They felt the need to have a socialist organization, a left party, but they did a very big mistake. And this is where we are coming, right? PSM thought this way, right? Because they thought, because of Barisan Nasional, they thought that the reformist argument are correct, that the Barisan Nasional is such a force. They have so much of, they have limitless electoral machineries. They use propaganda. They control all the institutions. They are going to use racism. They are going to use their control over the structure of the politics, gerrymandering and all that, and they're going to guarantee their victory. First of all, we must convince the people to defeat Barisan Nasional. PSM agreed to this strategy. First of all, we must defeat to Barisan Nasional. Another thing, PSM probably thought that they are quite small and they are unable to effectively intervene in the coming movement. So what happened? Slowly, PSM cozy up to the reformist movement, and this defined the left approach of the entire reformist movement in the mid 2000s. So, because the only left party is PSM, right? And they are cozying up to the liberal reformists, and basically all the other left is also coalescing behind this liberal reformists. At that time, you can remember that many of the PSM leaders were standing in elections under PKR flag, under DAP flag, under various different liberal reformist flag. They were very openly collaborating with the liberal reformist camp. And in about 2008, at the peak, actually PSM is doing very well. PSM has a member of parliament and all that. Jaya defeated Samivelu in Sungai Siput, and they had like such a high profile at that time. At the peak of PSM's height, right, there was an argument. There was an argument from inside within PSM saying that we cannot support these liberal reformists. Ultimately, they're going to betray us. We have to right now argue for an independent political force away from the liberal reformists, because they will betray the masses, and when they betray the masses, we can meet the masses. We can meet the masses with a clean track record, with a clean perspective, a clear understanding of what is going to happen, and we can produce, slogans and demands to connect the masses with the ultimate conclusion that we cannot put our hope on the liberal reformists. If we want to change Malaysia, if we want to progress, we have to rely on the organization of the working class. We have to rely on the strength of the working class. Although it was very difficult to do back in the day, right? Because every other movement was coalescing behind the reformists. Nobody is arguing to build another independent, and it's very difficult for us to argue that. First of all, we are being castricized by PSM themselves. PSM was constantly calling us sectarians. We are trying to break the left unity and all that. In this difficult period, we have to fight against the PSM criticism, who is actually aiding the liberals to criticize us, you see. And we have to fight against the liberals, not directly, but through their fronts. So these liberal reformists created a lot of student fronts, a lot of ABU, a lot of Bersih movements. I mean, some of you may be familiar with this, lot of student movements and people movements. All of that was basically a puppet, basically working to try to win, to try to get the liberal reformists into power, basically. And in this very difficult period of time, we have to kind of stand alone with our perspective and argue to build a proper organization. I mean, a proper left independent working class organization. I mean, we didn't just sit passively. While PSM was doing the opposite, they're trying to cozying up with the liberals. We have managed to create cadreship. We have managed to create even a small group, but with a proper cadre, with proper perspective, and the proper tools to lead the masses, right? At least we have created that. Now that embryo of an organization that we have struggled to create, that will serve in the future, in right now, when the liberals are basically, in every day, the liberals are basically disillusioning themselves, like the masses are completely distrusting of the liberal reformists. When Rafizi is saying that he's going to do something, he's going to bring the real Reformasi. The masses are completely, like what Rachel said, jaded. They're not trusting. They're not trusting of any kind of a progressive movement. At this point of time, is where we, organizations such as us, even PSM is not too late, that we can try to create a kind of alternative politics for Malaysia. We can suggest, it's possible to suggest, people are more receptive. It is understandable why people are not receptive back in 2008, because there was an easier option. Easier option was given to them. You no need to struggle, you no need to organize the working class, just vote for Anwar, right? Get Anwar up, and Anwar will deliver us out of the evil. But that didn't happen. What happened is, as soon as Anwar took position, he betrayed the masses, and that has put a lot of this, liberal reformist pundits or supporters of liberal reformists, they put themselves in a very awkward position now. They have to call out this betrayal, but at the same time, they do not have any other solution, because for the entirety of their existence, all they have suggested is their only strategy is to vote Anwar back into power. So this is where we are at right now. I mean, of course, I fast forward many of our struggles in the past 10 years, how difficult it was to organize in this current, but things are starting to change. And that is where we have to bring our discussion. How long do I have?
15 minutes.
How long has passed?
About 40 minutes.
About 40 minutes passed. Okay, comrades, I have another, because I promised to finish in like 50 minutes. Discussions shouldn't take that long, because I also want to, we also want to hear from the participants today what they think from the youth perspective, what is the youth thinking. But one thing in these 10 minutes I try to explain, basically, what are we saying moving forward? So I've just said that we have already, predicted that the liberals are going to do this. Why are we making this prediction? There got to be some logic behind it, right? And that is what maybe in these 10 minutes we would like to discuss, so that we can bring the entire discussion towards building an independent working class alternative. First of all, what we should do is stop assigning a kind of quality to all these liberal leaders, right? Like, oh, Rafizi is like this. Oh, maybe Rafizi is better than Anwar. Rafizi talks this. Oh, maybe KJ is better. Or maybe this guy is better. Stop talking like that first of all. Because do not assign anything to them. These are puppets. These are empty heads. They are all managed and curated by their liberal capitalists, by their capitalist bosses. So first of all, don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do, right? Take for example, just a simple example I can give you about Rafizi. So Rafizi joined the government as what, if I'm not mistaken, economic minister. He became the economic minister in the first term. What, there were no cartels, there were no problems, there were no corruption when he was there. When the Pakatan Harapan was outside power, they were saying Najib is holding the prime minister post and finance minister post is unjust, is unfair. That is conflict of interest. But what did Anwar do? Right? What did Rafizi say after that? Nothing, right? How about the chicken subsidy? The chicken suppliers and the egg suppliers, there was an issue a few years ago during the Ukraine war, I think. There was a supply chain crisis. Chicken feed went up. So the chicken suppliers start to hold Malaysians hostage, right? Because the government say, don't increase the price because Malaysians can't afford it right now. We can't afford to subsidize you, the government saying. So the chicken supplier is saying, okay, then we won't sell it to you. We'll sell it to Singapore. We'll sell it to Thailand. Although the chicken suppliers and the egg suppliers, they were protected, by the government, given so much of leeway, given so much of tax breaks and all that. When things get very difficult for them, they just say, no, I'm not going to help you. We're going to just follow the free market principles. And what did Rafizi do? Rafizi basically went up a stage and told people, if chicken is too expensive, don't buy chicken. Buy something else. This is market. You are the government. Do something about it, right? That's what we are saying. When you're out of the government, you say so many things that you're going to do for people. When you're in the government, you became just basically a puppet for the capitalists, a puppet for the free market. You have no spine to go after the free market, and you just follow the rhythm. Only after Rafizi was defeated in his internal party election by Nurul Izzah, only then, now he's against cartel. So look at the hypocrisy. Same thing with Anwar. Now, are we now supposed to give our trust to Rafizi that he is somehow going to reform the politics so that people like us, the left people, we can freely involve in politics? No way. Rafizi is not going to do that. Remember what happened to PSM back in 2018 when PSM wanted to join the coalition with Pakatan Harapan. They got rejected. They were asked to stand by themselves. And when PSM negotiated with PKR and told that the Sungai Siput seat is theirs, Sungai Siput seat is Jayakumar's, can they stand in Sungai Siput with PSM flag? They said no. They said no. And Jayakumar still stood in Sungai Siput, and PKR put a candidate, and UMNO won, if I'm not mistaken. You see? So if PKR didn't put a candidate there, Jayakumar would have won with their PSM flag. That would have happened. But the reason they couldn't do that is their own fault. Because they, instead of organizing it independently, they were together with Pakatan Harapan all this while. Their electoral grand strategy was that. And every time comes election, they ask people to vote for Pakatan Harapan, and people are starting to make conclusion. If you're asking me to vote for Pakatan Harapan, why not I just vote for Pakatan Harapan? Why do I have to vote for PSM? You see, this is the contradiction. And we are arguing against the contradiction. Now, what we are saying is that, first of all, we have to understand what is party. And second of all, we have to understand if the bourgeoisie or the liberals or the representative of capitalists, can they do any kind of reformation? These two things we have to understand in order to analyze the situation in a more clear way. The first question is, who are the, let's go to the second question, right? Who are these bourgeoisie? Who are these progressive liberal bourgeois? These bourgeoisie are not same like the French Revolution bourgeoisie, right? The French Revolution bourgeoisie were revolutionary. They went against the monarchy. They cut the monarchy's head and they brought in a new society. I'm not saying that the French revolutionary were now also still revolutionary. They have become capitalists, of course, but they did usher in a new society. They were revolutionary. But the capitalists that we find in our country, they are not revolutionaries. The way they build capitalism in Malaysia is by collaborating with feudal forces, with British colonial masters, and by creating a kind of a peculiar monster of a capitalism which cannot be divorced from its tie, from its bind with feudal aristocracy, with the colonial masters, and also the international capitalists. That is the situation in Malaysia. So that is why we are saying we cannot assign some kind of quality to these capitalist leaders which they do not have. They don't have that quality to bring forth a new society. They are tied with the old forces, so unable to bring forth. In this sense, what are we supposed to do if the liberal bourgeoisie cannot reform the society? We cannot even get a society like any industrial nation. Like we can't even get freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association. These are the things enjoyed by highly industrialized countries like UK or US. The masses enjoy this under capitalism. We are also under capitalism. Why are we not enjoying this? Who are going to bring this? So our argument is that don't rely on the liberal bourgeoisie to bring you even the small menial reforms. We have to, in this kind of neo-colonial countries, we have seen time and again how the liberal reformists are unable to bring any kind of even small reform. Didn't Anwar say he's got a Mansour toll? What is so difficult to Mansour toll? You are the prime minister. The difficulty is that the economic system is controlled by the capitalist class. Anwar do not have the freedom to do that. He have to ask the permission of the capitalist class. He have to negotiate with the capitalist class. That is the reality, and this brings us to the second point, the second question: what is a party? Party, a political party, is a representative of a section of society, right? A representative of a class of a society. Our society are divided into various classes. Very briefly, class is your function in society. What you do in a society determines which class you are in. If you are the capitalist class, that means you own all the means of production, all the factories and all the mines and all the resources, right? If you are going and working in the mine, if you are working in the factory, you are the working class. Political party fundamentally represent the class. If you look at what do Rafizi represent, what do Anwar represent, what do Lim Guan Eng or Anthony Lok or past, name some people, Akmal Saleh, no, past, name some past people, Hadiawang and Samsuri, all these people, who do they represent? Their parties, who do they represent? They represent the capitalist class. How do you know that? Look at the economic policy. There is complete agreement with all of them in economic policy. There is disagreement in cultural policies. There's disagreement in some kind of political style, but there is no disagreement in economic policy per se. All of them agree. So this is how we identify that these people, no matter what they say, no matter what they wear, they can be very religious looking, they can be very humble, they can be very witty, they can be very clever, they can have all kind of accolades. But all these people, they are representing not your interests. They are not representing the exploited interests. They are not representing the working class interests. They are representing the ruling class, the capitalist interests. So, if you want a political party to represent the working class interests, then you have to build a party based on working class demands, working class economic policy, and based on the leadership from the working class themselves. So that is what we are arguing. Fundamentally, to break with this current of reformist politics, fundamentally break with the capitalist politics and start to build a working class politics. Everybody can agree with us that the Malaysia is coming to a kind of a crossroads, is heading towards a kind of a crisis, political crisis. Elections is going to come soon. The ruling government is very weak. There's infighting in the ruling government and the opposition government, and there is no real path forward. In these coming turbulent times, the youth cannot be just passively watching what is happening, right? We are urging the youth to be actively involved in this coming crisis and to put forward a clear program, a clear alternative. What PSM is doing for now, for example, is that they are still in some sort of same strategy as before, which is to make electoral collaboration with the liberal reformists. For example, right now PSM is in a coalition with MUDA. It is not very sure if they will still be in this coalition coming election, because there are some other things are happening surrounding Rafizi and all that. We are not very sure, but at this point it looks like PSM is not going to give a clear working class alternative. What we are saying is that maybe in the coming period, in the coming chaotic period, it is going to coincide with the global crisis as well. There's a crisis happening separately, regionally and globally in capitalism. The local crisis might coincide with the global crisis, and that might give us a lot of opportunity. I'm not saying right here that we can create a working class party and straight away usher in the revolution in the coming period. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying that there will be plenty of opportunities for us to build an alternative in the coming period. In the next few years, it is at least possible for us to use the situation, to use the disillusionment from the masses towards the current ruling class, and for us to argue for our politics and build a significant force. It is possible. Maybe it's even possible for us to play a significant role in heading any kind of mass movement, but before that, there are certain steps that we should do. We should also look into the regional politics of what's happening, because sometimes revolutionary fervor can be imported from outside, like just now I explained how the Reformasi movement itself came from Indonesia actually. So this also we have to keep a close eye, and we have to see in the coming times what we can do in order to stop the funneling of the youth energy and the masses energy into some kind of reformist project, and which leads into another round of betrayal, which is going to lead our country into more of a polarized situation. So I think I've completed run out of time. So we'll stop here.
I think Yuva mentioned that this is a time to be especially, there's a sense of urgency, right? And I agree that this is a time to be especially critical towards our local left and also global left currents in general. Because a large reason I joined Sosialis Alternatif is because of the rigorous use of Marxist analysis in critiquing this left currents by analyzing the historic development. In part, you just saw how Yuva did that, discussing about Malaysian left history and so on, right? But if not for this analysis, I think we would not even be here taking the time to understand the Reformasi movement, but also the Bersama Parti and what that means for the left now and what that means for the youth now joining us, right? So not just that, but I think it's important to understand the urgency we have as capitalist crisis and economic, political, and so on are intensifying. As we speak, they're intensifying. We can look towards our own local politics, also our neighbors to understand this. I have talked about this before, but I think it's important to know that across Southeast Asia and across the rest of the world, crisis is pushing youth towards politics, towards activism and so on, and playing an active role in the development of their politics, right? I think very recently, May 28th, Thai delivery riders, a lot of them consisting of youth, held a protest because they want to be part of the they want to be considered as employees and the platforms as employers. So they do get benefits, social security benefits, like healthcare, safety, workplace safety, and other benefits, right? Which have not been given to them yet. And it's the same situation in Malaysia. Yuva was earlier talking about, I know Kira was earlier talking about the situation with our gig workers here in Malaysia, where they are not given the same rights that other workers are given. This is a genuine crisis because of the sheer amount of youth that are forced to do gig work to make a living, right? They're very important, but also looking at our other neighbor, besides Thailand, Singapore, where recently in the May Day, aside from the main NTUC held Labour Day protest, there was an independent protest held by grassroots organizations where they are pushing for independent labour force, and also to tying the issues of economic crisis, of environmental crisis to capitalism, understanding that capitalism is the main issue and capitalism has to be challenged. We should be able to critique these movements and point out where they are missing, especially if they have especially reformist elements that do not actually challenge the systematic issue. In Malaysia, there are several youth organizations that are actually backing Rafizi. I won't go into detail, but especially because of his involvement in Azam Baki and in the SPRM issue. And you can make connections to what Yuva earlier said in Malaysian history, where these youth movements back reform, like Bersih and so on in our history. But history doesn't just repeat endlessly. Youth look back at the history. We're looking back at history, at youth struggle. For instance, 1971, where AUKU was introduced to actually smash youth political development. And we can also take a leap into recent events. For instance, the youth protests in front of the parliament, the reformist parliament, the current government. The current government, which by the way made promises that they would abolish AUKU. And also, they promised free education, but we have not gotten free education nor the abolishment of AUKU. In fact, they have doubled down and said that AUKU is necessary for schools. They cannot abolish it because then no universities can be formed. There's no legal basis for it. And in fact, Anwar himself was part of the 1971 youth movement, yet he's now betraying us and completely complicit with the actions that he is doing, right? So how can the youth now expect Rafizi to create any systematic change? The youth leaders now, for instance, Hamdin Nordin and so on, they are saying that the youth must be there to have a check and balance, to be the check and balance to the elite leaders, but the youth itself isn't enough, and we've seen that throughout history. We've seen that recently, especially with the situation in Nepal, where the youth took over the state and then haven't found a solution to the issues to this day, right? So we have to understand that we need a working class force to challenge capitalism, right? But, and I think I'm about to end, but people argue that the working class is not revolutionary, they're stagnant, they haven't been moving. In fact, the PSM leadership has also said that our strategy in building the working class is actually ineffective because the working class are not ready for revolution, not ready to move. But we have to understand the sensitivity and the ability of the working class to develop their consciousness for revolutionary causes. And the youth, we need to actively unite that consciousness that the working class are able to develop because of their class position towards a political alternative to challenge capitalism, right? So that's our responsibility, to build working class independent politics, chiefly via a workers' party, to represent the politics of the working class instead of the capitalist politics, this bourgeois politics, and to build the youth to be able to intervene in this movement of the working class development and provide political clarity. So that's what Socialist Alternative does. And thank you for...
Okay, that was a really great and insightful discussion. I just had some questions. This is my first time here, so correct me if this has been said before. So one of the things I was wondering about is the name Socialist Alternative. So you say socialism a lot, but is the goal to end up towards communism, or is that like a policy thing where you don't actually want to get towards communism? My second question is, one of the bigger criticisms of communism, such as in Black Marxism, is that it's not useful to use communism in countries other than European countries because it was made for those European countries. Do you disagree with that, or do you think that it should be taken into account when you develop all these policies?
Hello everyone, I'm Ray Ray. Thank you, Yuva, for the lead off and everyone for the contributions. I kind of want to talk a little bit about something that a lot of the youth already kind of know, but I kind of wanted to add on a little bit. Like Yuva said before, it's important for us to realize that a lot of these capitalistic class have tried their best to prioritize getting capital over anything, and because of that, the foundation of the economy is really weak, and that's kind of why it's really sensitive to all of these shocks that can come up, right? And if we think about it logically even for a second, I think it's really important for us to prioritize the foundation before anything else. But that just shows how simple-minded the capitalistic class are. And I wanted to also point out that it's important for us to be dialectical and understand the fact that there is also change of the youth on the capitalistic side, because since us being here, it's a proof that the cracks in the system are showing, and it's showing enough for us to be here and actually talk and try to understand what's happening. But at the same time, the capitalistic class are also trying to bring youth into it, which is kind of when you guys see the people that are selling courses online about drop shipping and all of these different things. Because it's important for us to know what they're trying to do is put into the minds of the youth that it's important to get rich, and it's also important to get rich fast. And that will decrease the reason to have an incentive to actually grow the foundation, to build the foundation. And the government will feel like, oh, we don't really need to, because a lot of the youth also think the same way as we do. So I want you guys to also understand that since the youth in the left side are growing with power, a lot of the youth are also growing in the right, capitalistic side. But I also want you guys to remember that we also have the power of the masses on our side. And it's important for us to work a lot harder to bring these people into our side and fight. So, yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Sarah. Thank you, Yuva, for starting off the discussion. And thank you everyone else for the contribution so far. So I think I'll talk about how universities, because I'm sure most of us are university students here, how they play a role in the capitalist system. And it kind of expands a bit on what Fel said about how Anwar himself was in the student movement. So yeah, starting off with that, a few of our current government figures have been very involved in student activism in the past. So Anwar Ibrahim Adam Adli, who is our current Deputy Minister of Higher Education, they used to be involved in student activism, and they would champion movements and demands to abolish AUKU for free education and abolish the loan system like PTPTN. But the thing is, now that they have come into power, there is no tangible improvements for students and for the education system as a whole. In fact, PTPTN debt is almost at 40 billion ringgit, and AUKU still exists. And in fact, Zamri himself who is the current Minister of Higher Education, he stated that the current government has no plans to abolish AUKU, despite this being one of Anwar's pledges back when he was in Pakatan Harapan. And so looking at Anwar's journey, how he started off as a student activist in the 1970s, and then how he started his political career from the 1980s onwards, and even throughout that he would constantly be against AUKU. And now that he's the current Prime Minister, how come AUKU is still in place? It's not abolished or anything yet. So we should note that it's not actually because of any individual moral failure. It's not because Anwar decided to turn evil or something, but it's because the system itself cannot be reformed through electoral politics. And the universities do play a role in legitimizing the capitalist system through reproducing class relations. So private universities ensure that the upper classes can maintain their privilege, and public education sectors, which tend to be underfunded, are what produces the working class. And it's not to say that we don't support these small student movements and activism and stuff like that, but rather we should guide the movements towards realizing the importance of working class solidarity, because working class leadership is the only way that we can transform these temporary movements against small discontent with specific issues into specific failures of the system into a more permanent and strategic force for revolutionary change. And so we should channel all this outrage against the specific injustices towards broader class struggle and towards the ultimate goal of overthrowing capitalism itself. And we should not end up taking the same route like Anwar and the others took. It's important we form our own clear perspective and not fall for these sweet promises that they ultimately have no way of actually achieving. So.
Okay, so I just would really like to regurgitate a lot of the points that we've been saying today, from Phil, from Sarah, to everyone, right? But I would like to say in a way that answers a very important question. Whenever we talk about politics, whenever we talk about change in Malaysia, right? There's a very important person in our life called our parent that is always telling us this one thing: "Ayah, change will never come lah. Ayah, no change in Malaysia will ever happen," right? And to their credit, to what they know as change, big quotation marks there, right, has not brought anything. And through this discussion, I think the reason why I'm trying to regurgitate this is because it directly answers that question. Why has the change through since Merdeka and all, never really brought us freedom, never really brought us prosperity in anything, right? Because as what Sarah said, you cannot reform a system that is inherently wrong, right? And so, eventually, as we keep doing this phony pseudo changes, right? Or Anwar Ibrahim, Reformasi, okay, Rafizi Ramli and his Reformasi, we are increasingly, every day, being faced with the source of the problem, capitalism, right? And how do we answer it? Are we just going to keep being reformers? Are we just going to be Rafizi 2.0? No. We have to answer it directly through Socialist Alternative, directly say that we, the people, must have our will in it, not through just some rich guy who so happens to be the economic minister. And that's what that's what I say. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Julia. I just have a question for everyone here, especially people part of Sosialis Alternatif. How do we as Malaysians defeat US imperialism when it's a major global issue that affects the whole world? Especially since the US is just making decisions that just harm all of us in general. How do we, as such a small country and such a small organization, overthrow imperialism? How do we do that? Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Syed, chairperson of Angkatan Kesatuan Siswa Sosialis Aksi. So as a student activist, I have a few things to say, maybe to contribute, not much of a question. So after the betrayal of Pakatan Harapan, many of the youth and the students have been demoralized in political electoralism. Well, this is good and all, because electoralism is a dead end. Some of the youth and students derail themselves into another extreme, that is zealous anti-partisan activism. The problem with this tendency is that it made the students to do activism for the sake of it, without any coherency in political program. Due to the relationship that most students have with the means of production, that is, some of them are either attached, disassociated, or partially attached or dissociated from the MOP. This made them a very oscillating class that cannot be generalized into a progressive revolutionary force and hence must be treated with caution. They must realize their social relations. What the youth and the students need is a coherent proletarian program. Our final goal should not be anti-current thing, like UMNO or PH, but the total abolition of class society, wage, labor, nation state, and everything that currently exists. Incurrency in program and opportunist alliance had killed many revolutionary movements around the world. The immaturity of the Kommunistische Partei Deutschland, KPD program, and their leniency in organizing with their former revisionist allies, the Sozialdemokratie Partei Deutschland, had killed Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht. The opportunist alliance of the KPD and the Social Democrats during the Nazi era has caused confusion within the ranks of the proletariat. We should treat opportunists in the same light as the bourgeoisie. There cannot be any compromise. The incurrency of the political program and opportunism within the trade union in France had killed the May 68 fervor. The petite bourgeois demands for structural reforms had delayed a revolution in Indonesia. Remember the 14/8 demands in Indonesia that were when last year there was a really big mass movement in Indonesia. The proletariat must be united in rejecting these demagogues that lies to the working class with reformist policy instead of seizing and smashing the bourgeois state. Same is with Nepal. The students rally alongside other classes for inter-class and reformist demands. Has there been a dictatorship of the proletariat in Nepal replacing the revisionist Communist Party of Nepal? No, they instead replaced the monsters with another populist liberal monsters who still bury the proletariat alive. So I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lee. I would like to repeat my opinion on PSM leadership. As someone that's still in PSM, we have seen PSM failures in attempt to on bureaucracy and tourism into following the tail light of Muda after Rafizi followed with the establishment of Bersama for another exhausted independent reformist party, which has formed in many other countries as well. PSM leaders have lost their Marxist principle, as it seems, paralleling the first international working men's association, which eventually fell because of incoherence of Marxist principle. And PSM leadership have shown their neoliberal tendency on reformism for bureaucracy prestige instead of representing the working class needs, which resembles the Bernie Sanders and AOC Democrat campaign that has lost their popularity since 2018. Thank you. And if I can add a question, which is on is there a critical point of capitalist reformism?
All right. I think thank you, Yuval, for actually giving quite a comprehensive lead off. And I think I would like to give a bit of a contribution to the whole event today. As a socialist organization, we are putting forward a political perspective based on a continuous class struggle, which is the oppressed against the oppressor, the working class against the capitalist class. Historically, we have been witnessing the involvement of the masses into the political sphere, which goes beyond the electoral process. Now, these mass movements, which during the early decades merely presents itself as a mass democratic struggle that consists of total structural reforms. In other words, the dominant Barisan Nasional was seen as a main enemy, just like what Yuva has mentioned before, and it represents cronyism, corruption, and the inequalities that the society has been facing. But the dissatisfaction that exists at the basis of the mass movements is not merely a struggle against BN alone, against Barisan Nasional alone, which for us consistently argue that they are merely the symptoms. The objective situation that pushed the masses onto the streets reflects the inevitable class conflicts globally, which is the Asian financial crisis and the global financial crisis 2007-2008, and the ongoing crisis that starts from the Middle East war. That produces crisis in the economy, creates unemployment, inflation, stagnation of wages, etc. It represents the bankruptcy and the failures of the capitalist class and its representative, which is the people in the parliament and the top bureaucrats, to solve the fundamental contradiction in the capitalist society. Now, this fundamental contradiction that creates a miserable condition of the working class can only be solved by replacing the capitalist system with an egalitarian and democratic society, which is socialism. Now, it is within this understanding that we put forward our criticism towards Bersama, a party which is characterized by the class interests that they represent. And if we look at the agenda that the Bersama is putting forward, is merely representing the interests of the petty bourgeois class, which consists of the majority, and doesn't even say majority of the majority, which is 70% of the economy, but doesn't even put up a position, a critical position, towards a multinational corporation or the big GLC, Gamuda, Saimdabi, and all that. Bersama is merely continuing the aspirations of the Reformasi movement, the idealism that starts during the AFC crisis. But our argument, our political position, the reformist struggle in itself is not going to solve the fundamental issue, which is the systemic capitalist structure itself. And the baggage of the system is too big and overwhelming to solve merely to argue on reforms. And the possibility of Bersama, of their future capitulation, bowing to the pressure of the capitalist class, is not merely our speculations, but concrete historical examples that has showed itself over and over again throughout the mass struggle. And without a position, or without a party having a position or perspective on the independent forces that can fight against the capitalist class, which is the working class, linking their immediate demands with the questions of abolishing capitalism. So there is an inherent betrayal of reformism that can lead to the disappointment among the masses and led to a political vacuum for the right-wing demagogue to instigate and basically further divide the working class. We as an organization, socialist organization, we are putting forward a class perspective and a class politics. Inevitable class struggle will expose the inabilities of the capitalist class and their ruling class to solve the problems of the majority of the workers. Arguing to build mass working class forces through building a mass workers' parties and towards a struggle to take over the political power, not just in our country, but the whole world. And we are urging, maybe basically our message to the new participants to read our position and to understand our ideas. And if you agree with us, help us build the organization, a struggle for the working class and towards socialism. Thank you.
I think this is throughout Socialist Alternative's existence, this is one of the most, I suppose, rich discussion that have I ever attended. What I mean is, not that we have never had this amount of participants, but the quality of contribution, talking about capitalism, talking about building left alternatives, and what is your curiosity about socialism, thinking about new vision of the world, is something very, very promising for my generation thinking about the future. And there's a reason for it. It's because of the global economic situation, global capitalism in crisis, and it's entering a new era. And you can see the markers, such as you can see Trump coming back 2.0, and then you can see the geopolitical crisis that's happening in Ukraine and Palestine, and also the historic famine disaster that's happening around the world, such as in Sudan and Gaza. It has never ever happened throughout the history of capitalism. So because of this, you can see there is a social unrest everywhere around the world. Wherever you point in the continent, there isn't one. There is at peace, or there is no social uprising. There's some kind of protest that's happening. So in this mood, in this uprising that's happening, there is a loud and clear demand for systemic change. Though it is emancipated differently, such as in some places you can see the government has been toppled down by the youth just now, like how Fel has explained, and situation in Indonesia, such as the Indonesia Gelap, Dark Indonesia, Thailand, and so on. Systemic change. However, who is going to lead this change? Who is going to lead the struggle? And who is going to be at the position in restructuring our society? That is the next important question that we all need to answer, and at which Socialist Alternative have the answer, which is working class. And in this question, about the question of working class leadership, working class politics, there is challenge. We would say there is challenge everywhere around the world, where we need to struggle and we need to have a dialogue, have a discussion with the rank and files in the leadership. With that being said, comrades, I think one of the questions that is a little bit, I would like to bring comrades closer, participants closer to the working class politics. I'm going to put this down. Situation in Malaysia, the amount of labor that we have right now that is in members of trade union, this is only less than 3%. And then what Yuva has explained about the left politics that we have in Malaysia, I would also contribute on the general left awareness on building socialism and building anti-capitalism movement, where in 1990s, after the Berlin Wall has fallen, it is where the awareness of working class has eroded on looking at socialism and communism. Also, the left parties and the trade unions also being co-opted with the government. So in this situation where we are right now, there is a movement, especially the youth, who want systemic change, but left parties and trade union, where class struggle platforms is at the shaky ground, where revolutionaries like us need to intervene and discuss and bring perspective and program. So at this point, I would like to encourage everyone here to join us and go to the working class, where what we are doing right now, go to the factories, close to the factories, where workers come and sit down and having a break, with our paper, with our leaflet, talk to them, discuss with them what do they think about the war situation, what do they think about the minimum wage. So that's how we connect. So yes, we have all the materials that we do, but how do we really understand them is when we go to the ground and talk to them, and building and agitating them to get organized. So why I say this is because I think the level of discussion over here that we have right now, I think everyone here in the room quite agree that working class is the leadership to change society, is the leadership, is the politics that we all want, that we all can say that's our politics. We don't want the politics that only cares about profit. But so that's the level of our discussion now. Now what's next? The next is we go to the ground and meet them, meet the workers at the factory, at the picket lines, at the strike action that they are. So comrades, so everyone, later on you can write your names over there. We can contact you whenever when we are going to campaigns and you are at the industrial area. Come and join us. Let's have a talk with the workers. I understand some of you might say, I cannot speak Malay and all that. It's okay. You have program, you have material at your hand. It speaks for you. It speaks about our politics. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Wenjun. I'm a member of Socialist Alternative. Thank you to Yuva and Kira for the lead off and all the excellent contributions today. I think in regards to reformism and the Reformasi movement in Malaysia in particular, it's, as mentioned by Yuva, I think it's important to understand Reformasi in the context of the situation that birthed it, right? The 1997 Asian financial crisis. I personally understand the Reformasi movement as something brought on by the mass anger and the socio-economic strife caused by the 1997 Asian financial crisis. What I mean by that is that there was surely a lot of anger and discontentment with our government then and now from the movement, right? It's not like the politicians were like, oh, let's like reform the government and let's deliver these reforms, right? They didn't think that during 1997. It was the time where the market took a huge crash. People were, there was a lack of confidence in the global market. So it's important to understand that reformism as sort of a cap on mass anger to soothe the anger. It wasn't to actually deliver reforms or to better society, but to soothe the anger and to redirect the anger and to redirect a lot of that mass anger to support these reformist politicians, right? And that's why a lot of, say, our youth movements, our pro-democracy movements, anti-corruption movements, like Bersih, that are backed by a lot of people, have been misled by liberal reformist politicians who actually want things to be better. People like you and me, into this dead-end electoralism, reformism that ultimately goes nowhere, and originally activists, for example, that Sarah mentioned, Anwar was formerly an activist, now he's the Prime Minister, doing the same things that he protested against when he was a youth. Adam Adli, the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, protested against AUKU in his youth in the early 2000s. Now he is the one enforcing it in the government right now, and it's the system doing what it was designed to do. It's not individual virtue. It's not Adam Adli. He decided to just, oh, I enter the government, I'm evil now. It's the system doing as designed, right? It's taking these young, fresh activists who want to better the world, and the system taking them and co-opting these young, fresh activists into sort of enforcers for the system. Right, so we understand that the pro-democracy youth movements lose steam without working class backing. Why we say that these movements lose steam without working class backing? Because there is no effective way for these movements to challenge the current government state without the working class. And how do we challenge that? With strikes, with mass action, by organizing workers amongst themselves to realize their economic levels on society, that we can, for instance, during the pandemic, workers that were previously ignored or thrown to the wayside were suddenly considered essential workers by the state. Oh, suddenly these workers that were considered disposable, Grab drivers, EMT nurses, productive layers of society, even those in factories that produce PPE equipment, they were now considered essential workers. So even the capitalist state acknowledges that the working class is required to run our societies. And if they didn't, our society would cease to run. Our current society would cease to exist without the working class. So upon understanding that the working class is required for society to function, and the capitalists cannot exist without it, we can now understand that the working class is the core force in society to organize our forces around, to drive change, right? And so I see today there's a lot of youth around us. So it's important to understand that youth movements have to build an alliance and solidarity with the working class. And I have a question for the panel here today. How do we build solidarity amongst the youth and the working class with transitional demands and issues? And a question I had from one of the new people here today was, how do we build solidarity among the international working class? Because for instance, people would say, oh, the working class in Malaysia is very small, right? How do we challenge the US imperial state, for instance, right? So I think it's important to have a clear program, clear strategy and tactics, but I think it's clear to everyone here today that in the environment that we grew up in, that, Reformasi is dead. and it has always been just a way to co-opt that anger into something else. But it's never been clearer now. So yeah, thank you.
I think I should talk about the role Socialist Alternative has played so far. I mean, since I joined, what I've done in Socialist Alternative, but also to talk about the role of capitalism. So capitalism, Marx wrote that capitalism did in fact play a revolutionary role in the development of society, the development of productive forces, in particular the industries, the factories, and so on. But also importantly, the development of the proletarian working class itself, right? This concentrated mass of workers who essentially have nothing to lose but the chains. And I have to say that this capitalist system, economic system, I guess sudah lapuk lah, you'd say in Malay. It's old, it's unable to fulfill the needs of society, right? Reformism in the first place is a reaction to the failure of capitalist organization, and working class organization itself develops from that failure of reformism, right? Of course, we have to play an active role in connecting that to politics, but the point I'm trying to make is capitalists did play a revolutionary role, a progressive role, and that progressive role it can no longer play. And we need to have a socialist program to move forward from this, right? The capitalists, give me just a second. All right, I do want to talk about the permanent revolution. So something, sorry, I'll just go into it. The capitalist class in Malaysia are too weak to fulfill our democratic rights or even our basic rights, right? Earlier, Kira was talking about the crisis experienced across the world by ordinary people, where capitalism produces so much excess, yet so many people are starving, so many people are suffering, so many people cannot have a decent livelihood because of this capitalist system. And the capitalist class in Malaysia is too weak to fulfill our democratic rights, to allow youth democracy, to contain youth anger, because AUKU exists to contain youth anger. And actually, Zamri is right when he says that we cannot just abolish AUKU, because AUKU exists to contain youth anger, right? AUKU cannot be abolished under capitalism, because if it were abolished under capitalism, youth would immediately take to the streets to protest, to connect to politics, to connect to the working class. The capitalist class is also too weak to pull Malaysian tax money used to bail out the GLCs towards funding education, towards actually progressive causes, to actually helping people who are in need, working people who are in need. And they also are too weak to put surplus earned and made by the working class towards actually paying the workers their fair wages. Instead, we have to pay patch up that discrepancy through our. I don't pay taxes, but taxpayers have to use their money to fund these subsidies and so on, right? And in all these cases, the capitalist class is the leadership, the political leadership is protecting the capitalists to ensure they maintain profits, right? So, when the capitalist class fails in such a way, we need to have a working class leadership, right? And we also talk about the transitional program. How exactly do we convey this to the working class? How exactly do we build working class independence? So through having joined SA, we do, like Kira has mentioned earlier, paper campaigns in factory areas. We have our discussions where we discuss our politics, our perspective, and so on. And how exactly, all of that with the goal of being able to go to the working class and being able to talk to them and explain to them and be able to build with them, right, for their leadership. Again, I'm going to address something I mentioned earlier, where people say the working class is not revolutionary and so on. I already said that the working class does develop their consciousness through material conditions, economic crisis, and so on. But also, when we organize with the working class, when we have our transitional demands in our paper, minimum wage, and so on. When they fight for things like minimum wage, when youth fight for free education, and so on, as they struggle, they realize the structural blocks that exist that stop us from being able to actually achieve these things. And understanding that structural block is important for us to be able to understand that this cannot be done within the capitalist system, that there needs to be a planned economy to be able to support free education, to support actual youth democracy, and to be able to redistribute the wealth so that people can actually live decent lives. And I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you very much for all the contribution. I think everyone's a little bit tired, the place is a little bit hot, so I will make it brief because there's a lot of things to discuss, and of course, we are limited by the material conditions now with facility, time and all that, language and all that. So I encourage comrades to engage in discussion, read some more things about this, what we have recommended, come and discuss with us to get more clarity. There's only so much we can do in this kind of setting, So that's just to give a disclaimer before I go into some of the questions and some of the contribution. Like Kira said, it is one of the most fruitful discussions we had. It's not accidental, I think. It's also one of the times where we are having like a lot of youth looking at us, and they're coming and joining us. I think our organization now average is like 22 years. I'm bringing the average up, So young people are joining and all this at this point of time. So I don't think it's coincidence that we are having this level of discussion now. I think it's the objective condition of what is happening in Malaysia. The Malaysian political movement and development is what is forcing us into this kind of discussion, forcing us to try to understand the situation so that we can chart the way forward. Thank you very much, Fel, for the contribution that you gave. You said about the importance of Marxist analysis. Try to explain a little bit about our thought process of how we come to certain conclusions, like I said just now about reformism. Generally, how do we make this kind of decisions, and how do we put forward the perspective and all that? I mean, yes, Marxist analysis, as well as our international is also a big factor in forming these perspectives. We belong to an international. If you can look at the back, the flag there, CWI-CIT, so that is our international where we belong to, and we organize in like 50 countries or so, and according to the same perspective that we draw out every year, we come to a discussion and then we draw out this perspective. And basically, this perspective is not, like I've said, it's not because we have some sort of special powers we can see through the future. It is based on this. Why we have indicated now is because of the Marxist analysis, and it is very important for the youth, for the new comrades to understand that a revolutionary organization should be based on a methodology which can be checked by everybody. It shouldn't be based on the heads of few leaders. The leaders shouldn't have so much authority to say that this is what we do. Follow me. That's what PSM do basically. I'm sorry to refer to PSM a lot, but this is our history. We are there. I mean, PSM say we criticize them, but we are there to criticize them. So what else are we supposed to do? This is the history. We are there because we represent a different attitude towards the reformists, a different alternative towards the reformists. So that is why we always bring PSM in the discussion to just contrast ourselves. But just to give an example, like in PSM and all, they do not use dialectical materialism to make decisions. If they did, they would be able to explain their decisions. Their decisions are made out of authority. There are few authoritative people there, bureaucrats who have been there forever. They use their experience and their authority to say this is what you should do. Because of that, there are no members who can come and say, hey, maybe we should do like this, because the new members got no authority. But if you have a method, if you have an objective scientific method, now it depends on how good you are at using the method. So even a new member can criticize, can ask, can question. According to this scientific objective method, how do you justify your strategy? This process is not happening in the revolutionary organization. This is extremely important. I think that is, exactly what Fel is pointing to when he say the importance of Marxist analysis, and he pointed at the urgency the urgency that we are facing now with the global capitalist crisis. I'll come to that in a bit, but these are very, very important. And thanks, Fel, for stating that. And also, Fel talked about, I just tie up Fel's last and talked about permanent revolution, the working class leading the society, leading the politics and AUKU and all that. So I think I can connect with Raja's question about us, Socialist Alternative. So you asked that if we are propagating communism, like, are we serious in the socialists? Are we serious socialists? Or are we just saying socialists so that we can, get in the parliament? I think that you're talking about PSM. We are serious socialists, yes. Yes, but at the same time, communism is a stage in the future, right? It's a further, very, very far in the future. Even socialism is a stage in the future, right? We can understand that socialism can be fought for and built based on the current material conditions that we have under capitalism. We can understand that, but we have not yet, in order to go from capitalism to socialism, there must be a transitory, right? There must be a transitory period. That is what we call a working class state, right? A working class representative from trade unions and the workers' leadership, they taking over the state, that will transition the society, transform the society, ease the society into socialism, because the working class state will accommodate appropriation of the private properties that has been accumulated by few people. Just the one person own everything. How are we going to appropriate that? So that is the working class state's role. And this also, I think, connects to your second question, which is, we are propagating for working class state, if that answers your question directly. Not socialism per se, working class state first, in order to go to socialism, and then communism. But right now it's working class state. And for Malaysia, like you said, socialism seems to be only possible in like Western industrial European and America, for example, because the industry has developed to a level, and also people's consciousness have developed to a level that they can entertain the idea of going into new society if they are compelled. If the current system is not serving their interest, they can be compelled to move towards a new society, yes. How about Malaysia? Because countries like Malaysia, many of the youth and everybody, they're not really thinking of socialism. They just want what is there in the Western European countries, right? The more industrial countries. They have more freedom there, we want more freedom. Like, for example, the youth who are not really burdened by economy too much. Everybody is burdened by economy, but compared to the working class or compared to the more exploited, the youth main issue is the democratic issue. Why do Malaysia don't have any democracy? Why can't I say anything that I want, you see? You want the Western industrial nation. You are right. You see, you may be surprised I saying this, that you are correct, that yes, only the productive forces need to be advanced to a certain level for society to move to socialism, yes. How to develop the productive forces? In Malaysia, for example. So, in Malaysia, it is true that everybody just wants free education and a better capitalism, but the question is, who is going to deliver that? This is a very important question, right? Yes, we want that, but will Anwar do that? That's what everybody thought. He didn't do that. Now will Rafizi do that? Will PAS do that? Who is going to do this, even the basic democratic rights? Who's going to win for the masses? This is where we say the bourgeoisie, they are spineless in this neo-colonial country. Their interest is tied to the interests of the feudal aristocracy and the old forces. We cannot trust the bourgeoisie. We have to build a working class, independent political leadership to challenge the bourgeois politics, right? Now, there's another question now. If the working class are the one, we are saying only the working class can deliver these democratic rights. Like, for example, in Thailand, for example, now, there's also a process of trying to get democracy in Indonesia, in Philippines. Only the working class will be able to bring this, because it is in their interest to bring this. It's not in the capitalist interest, right? Because they want to keep the current system. And if the working class is leading and taking over the state power, why should the working class just stop reforming the system? Why should they just stop there? Just bring you freedom of education, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and stop there? Why? Why don't the working class go further why don't they go further and appropriate the resources? why don't they take over the height of the production, like all the production centers in Malaysia? Why don't they take over democratically? Why don't they take over the health system? Why don't they take over the entire the entire function of the state and perform it to the level, bring it towards socialism? Why would they stop? That is our question. Because the working class is the revolutionary class to bring socialism. And if they took over the state power, why would they simply stop? So this is what Fell said, permanent revolution. We propagating the permanent revolution in neo-colonial countries. We are saying that even in order to accomplish the basic democratic rights, we have to rely on the working class. The burden falls on the working class, and upon seizing the state power, the working class would not stop there. They should continue to transform the society towards socialism. So I hope that pretty much answered your question, and also some other questions that others had. Ray, thank you very much for the contribution as well. It's very important contribution. You have pointed out that the crisis, the capitalist system in crisis is revealing itself, is forcing us to talk about this. And also they talks a little bit about the power of masses. The masses, we have the masses by our side. The capitalists only have, they got weapons and tools and all that, but who's operating them, right? That is why we always say, in order for capitalism to exist, there needs to be a working class. There needs to be a working class who's working tirelessly, endlessly, like also Wenjun mentioned about the essential workers and all. These workers just become essential when the capitalists need them. After that, they just throw them in the dustbin. So, the very important point that Ray brought, and also thank you very much for Sarah to bring the question of AUKU, and in the question of fighting for free education and education rights in Malaysia. We cannot rely on people like Anwar, who himself has been an activist, student activist, victimized by AUKU, and now he's refusing to repeal AUKU. Adam Adli, for example, I know Adam Adli very well. We organized together. He was very famous for going against PTPTN and going against PTPTN and fighting for free education. But Adam Adli right now is basically toothless. The same story again and again, and we cannot rely. More importantly, we cannot allow our youth to be used by these reformists. What the reformists do is they use the energy of the youth. The youth, they want a change of society, they want a better society. So they use the energy and they win the state power, and then they will turn around and betray them. So even if you want like democratic rights, right? AUKU you want to abolish, you want to have Akta Hasutan, the Sedition Act abolished so that you can speak more freely. You want ISA, no more ISA, the SOSMA now. If you want all this abolished, you cannot rely on Anwar or Rafizi, and that is our point that we are repeating. Thank you, Sarah, very much for repeating that, and also talking about, talking about the working class, the importance of joining the struggle with the working class. Also, Syed also said something like that, like, the students, they are oscillating class. Some of them are from poor background, some of them from a rich background. There are all sorts of class background right inside the students. But one thing we have to realize that increasingly this process of proletarianization is happening. That means the middle class, even the middle class of a little bit higher stature before, even they are feeling the pressure of the economy, and they are coming to the politics of the working class. So that is why I say it is important that a lot of middle class is also developing the consciousness from the youth, from the student. It's important for us to intervene and to bring them towards the working class politics instead of pushing them towards liberal politics, which is not going to produce any kind of progressiveness. Are you timing me? You're timing me. 6 minutes, okay. Thank you, Jihad, for saying that you cannot reform a system which is fundamentally broken. You're absolutely right. You can try to patch it. If there's a pipe running here, If the pipe is 50, 60 years old, very, very old pipe, very rusty, it leaks, you go and patch it. It'll leak somewhere else, you can go and patch it, it'll leak somewhere else, it'll keep leaking and then it'll fall down. Somewhere you have to ask the question, should we just change the pipe to something more newer, more efficient, more better, or should we just keep trying to repair this? That is what Jihad was saying, that the system is fundamentally broken, especially in neocolonial countries. We do not have the capitalist system like in Western democracies. We have this weird, convoluted, Trotsky called it a peculiar development of capitalism in neocolonial countries, which basically do not give us any kind of space to use the democratic space that is there in order to achieve our goals. We have to use parliamentary and, like what Syed said, extra parliamentary efforts as well, which is like what Wenjun as well said and few others have said, like we should rely on the power of the working class, the strike action, the picket, the protest of the masses, taking over the production, the factories as a more effective form of organization, a more effective way to bring about the transformation of society instead of relying on electoral process. Because the entire electoral process is basically designed to make you lose in various bureaucracy, various institutions. I mean, the entire election is basically made in order to lie to the people, to divide the people, and make sure that the capitalist parties keep winning. So we have to think outside of that. Thank you, Jihad. Thank you, Julia. Julia asked a question. That's a very important question, I think. How, as Malaysian, we could defeat US imperialism? I think we cannot defeat US imperialism as a Malaysian alone. You have to elevate yourself as a member of the international working class movement, international working class solidarity, that means what I'm trying to say, you want to defeat US, you organize the working class of US. You organize them to fight against their state and take over the state. That is how we do it. We don't go and fight. And I will also remind Julia that we also have to defeat Chinese imperialism. China is also an imperialist, and we also have to organize the Chinese working class. And that is why we say the coming struggle is an international struggle, international working class struggle. It is not our wish, it's the condition that has been prepared by capitalism itself. Capitalism is the one which integrated the entire global economy and connected everybody and connected the working class. The coming struggle cannot happen in local, in domestic setting. It will by its definition, it will be elevated into an international struggle, and we have to connect to the international struggle if we were to defeat these big US imperialist forces, Chinese imperialist forces, and so forth. We have to figure out a way, starting from this position, how we're going to end that. And that is what we are talking about, moving from just general agreement of statements into agreement on grand strategy and tactics on the ground. That is, we have to move towards that. Lee, thank you very much. Lee was an ex-PSM member, so she knows a lot of things what we were talking about. So she was until recently were in PSM, and I think she asked a few questions to the leadership regarding their working together with MUDA, and she got probably some disappointing answers where PSM is saying that they want to work together with MUDA in order to try to win over the MUDA youth. No, you don't do that with joining with MUDA and legitimizing them. You do that by criticizing MUDA and not joining them. So PSM always trying to confuse people like this, so don't get confused. If you try to do that, like what PSM is doing, watering down their own program. For example, for the last May Day, many of us attended in May Day. PSM not even have put forth a proper minimum wage demand. There was no number for this is the minimum wage we are fighting for. They are saying we are going to go away from trade union bureaucracy, and we are going to go towards more politics. They took up anti-imperialism and anti-corruption demands during the May Day. The way we see it, you are doing this because you are watering down your policy. you do not dare to put forward a very strong minimum wage program because MUDA won't be with you. In order for you to do collaboration with MUDA, you have to water down your policy. I don't think Arul is being genuine when he's saying, I'm doing this just to attract the MUDA youth. You are doing this, there's a danger with this, is a lot of PSM youth will be attracted by MUDA and they will go there just because of the confusion. So we are trying to avoid that. Thank you very much, Lee, for pointing that out. And Lee asked the question, is there a critical point of capitalist reformasi? That means, is there a point where reformasi won't work anymore? Is that what you're asking? So yes, okay, so Lee is pointing out that I mean, it's not fair to say, like for example, what Wenjun said, under capitalism you cannot, did Wenjun say that, or maybe Fel say that, under capitalism you cannot repeal AUKU. I mean, it's possible still. Under capitalism you can do. That's what Lee is talking about. There are certain countries, there are certain limits to how much you can go, right? But I think the greater point here to realize is that if they repeal AUKU, they're going to do something else. Sneakily. They're going to replace AUKU with something else. The name's going to change. They're going to maybe put more, more oppression. They're going to increase the oppression to general public maybe, create more different laws to try to some kind of, to try to kill our voice basically. And I mean, Fel is absolutely right. AUKU serves a function and that's why it is there. If AUKU was removed, something else have to serve its function, right? Because it has certain function which is to basically chop off the students' movement from its inception, from the very beginning itself, do not allow students to have a voice. And I'm very glad that many have said about that. And thank you very much, Johan and Kira. I wouldn't comment anything about that because I think Johan and Kira also gave like a kind of a proper conclusion. And also Wenjun pointed at many of the things I've already mentioned, the youth energy. And I think Wenjun spoke very passionately about our conviction that working class, our confidence, that the working class will usher in the new society. I can understand from the participants' point of view, maybe there is not much interaction with the working class at this point of your life. Maybe it's just the beginning you are trying to understand about the history of working class. I urge comrades to look into the history, right? If you look into the history of the working class struggle, even in Malaysia, like we have done a few events, like for example about Hartal, 1947, Malaysian General Strike, investigate that, look at how active Malaysian working class movement were in the 40s up until the 70s, 80s, and how advanced the working class are, and also look globally. Look at the achievement of the working class in Russian Revolution 1917, although that revolution degenerated into Stalinism, but still the initial achievement is amazing, right? The first 5 years, it was a healthy democratic worker state in Russia in 1997. And look at the achievement of the working class, and try to understand that the working class consciousness is not same all the time. Like somebody mentioned that the working class consciousness rise in the crisis, in the struggle, in the material condition. As the crisis sharpens, their consciousness will rise. Our duty is to prepare for that time, for the future, not to prepare for now when the consciousness is low, meet the working class, the higher consciousness. Even right now, what are we talking about? Some of the working class can make sense. We call them the most conscious layer of the working class, and we are appealing to them right now. Those conscious layer of working class will thicken, will become more, and at that time they will be able to provide leadership. And here I just want to make it very clear. We don't see ourselves as the leadership of the revolution. Revolutionary Party is not the leadership, it is just helping in the process, in the process of the working class taking power of the state, right? We know the crisis is going to happen. We know chaos is going to happen. We want to intervene here in a most effective way possible, most scientific way possible, and to make the biggest impact possible towards positive impact. Because if you just leave a chaotic situation, like a revolutionary situation, we cannot determine revolution. We cannot say we want to start a revolution. Revolution will happen. When masses are really angry, they'll come to the street. And at that time, when the revolution starts, we have to be prepared and ready to intervene and discuss with the masses and bring them to the best of our ability towards a more positive, a more unified working class solidarity perspective. Otherwise, they will be diverted into a polarized, more suspicious, a bit of a fear-mongering kind of rhetoric. So we have to do this. In order to do this, the youth, don't worry, the struggle, the crisis itself is preparing the platform for you. You don't have to create any crisis. You don't have to create any platform. The platform is being laid down right now. Your duty, according to us, what we think is you have to be very well versed in history, in working class history, in class struggle, especially in understanding theory, what I spoke about, Marxism, science and all this. You have to be, because at this point of time, the working class is not moving, right? So now you have time. Now we have time to engage in all kind of theoretical discussion, because when the working class start to move, which may happen, they could be thrown into the struggle in the future en masse. At that time, we don't have time to argue about theory, right? We have to go to the ground and we have to start to organize the working class. Theory is important, history is important, Marxism, science, all this is important. And I believe the youth that are here, you can easily have access to this. It's not a very difficult thing for you to understand what I'm talking about. It'll take some time, but it's fine. What is challenging for you is to organize the working class, right? It's the experience to organize the working class. You have to go and talk to the working class. You have to convince them. It is not enough for you to just articulate it among us, youth. You have to try to articulate these ideas and concepts to the working class, to the level where they can understand, right? So that practice is necessary, absolutely necessary. That is what we do weekly paper campaigns. We try to go to industrial areas, not as a way to organize the working class right now, but as a way to practice, as a way to prepare ourselves for the coming struggle. Only if we can join the theory with the practice, this is a success. If we just have one and not the other, there is no, without a revolutionary theory, without a revolutionary organization, there cannot be a successful revolution, right? And that was proven by history. We are not determinists. We won't say like, because we are dialectician, we see that the demise of the capitalism is coming and socialism will come. No, we are not determinists. We say that if you want to bring socialism, if you want to usher in a new society, then you have to fight for it. You have to determine that right now. So we cannot wait for some sort of automatic transformation of society. I just want to end with, actually that's good enough note to end with. I just want to urge the youth to look into what we're talking about here. I understand that the youth are losing, you don't see a future, not like me. When I was a youth, when I was your age, we kind of had an idea that I'm going to, there's going to be a prosperous future. For the youth right now here, you have no prosperous future. You know that, yourself, you know that. So the question comes like, is either you stab the girl next to you and you get a hit, right? So either you kick the person below you, you get a hit, or you join hands and let's fight against the exploiter. Okay, let's not fight each other. And this is the most important part. Realize that there is no way forward without corrupting your morals. There is no way forward. If you want to really live like a ideal human being, then you have to come to the side of the revolution. In that note, I will end today, and thank you very much for all the participants. Thank you for that.
And we want to build, assist the working class in building a mass workers' party that is completely 100% independent from capitalist politics. So that alternative needs to be built. We cannot just, like Yuva just now in the conclusion, we cannot just talk about this in the abstract. We have to go to the ground and bring our ideas and make it into practice. A political force needs organization. And capitalists has all their organizations. The capitalist has their media, has their school, has their banks, has their all kinds of institutions to reproduce the capitalist propaganda that we hear and breathe every day. Socialists, therefore, do need their organization as well. Okay, socialists, what we don't have from the capitalists, what we don't have like the capitalists have, big wealth, big donors, we have the masses. Okay, we have every ringgit, every 5 ringgit from the working class man or 10 ringgit from the masses is going to build a big force. It's also important to understand that we say ideas are not enough. We have to gather material strength for the revolutionary force. We need funds for discussion, a lot of discussion like today, for example, ample discussions with the youth, with the workers. We need space for unions and youth to organize activities. We need publication. We need training for ourselves. We need to do campaigns. We need all kinds of other resources, tools. Basically, we need. That's why we, Socialist Alternative, we saw that the coming struggle, expecting the coming struggle, we got this office. Despite the fact that we were running on deficit, and we're still actually running on deficit. I mean, as with any socialist organizations, they have to run on deficit. We fund ourselves, 100%. No money coming from corporations, no big money, no nothing. It's all coming from the self-sacrifice of our comrades, our members, our sustainers, workers, youth, and also families of youth and connections that we have, whatever we get. But there's one thing we can guarantee is that we do not receive any finance contributions from our enemies. Yes, we were operating at a deficit. As you can see, with our office is barely, it's barely in shape. We do need a nice little air conditioner here so we can unlock this area, for example. We would like to maximize the utility of this space for revolutionary activities. And I think one of the common themes of this discussion is that how far the objective conditions, the crisis of capitalism has gone beyond our subjective condition, the consciousness of class, organization of revolutionary socialists such as us. So there is an urgency to the finance that we want to build. The finance that we're doing is political work. And we'll urge every participant here and comrades to help us secure 20,000 ringgit mainly for this office. We would like to set this office up to make it proper and so that we can set up a base for revolutionary socialists and revolutionary workers and youth. And the money that we get, 20,000, we are going to spend it on rent, on office equipment, on furniture, like the chairs you're sitting on, computers, recording equipment, conference tools, printing equipment, which is our heart because we do print a lot of materials like our paper and so on. And so out of this appeal 20,000, I'm very happy to report that we have already exceeded 10%. We actually have raised 2,500, so good job, comrades. And we have 17,500 ringgit to go for a balance. So any help would be very helpful. Just to sort of just conclude what I want to say, every ringgit is a declaration of independence from capitalist politics. Every ringgit counts. We rely on our class for our finances, our resources. We do not rely on our enemies, the capitalist class, and their allies. So that our politics cannot be bought, so that we can remain loyal to the working class, remain loyal to the socialist cause. And finally, I'd just like to say, we have plenty of materials on sale here. You can also support us by purchasing our material. As with Zulfa at the back, he's proudly displaying our latest paper, our May Day edition. It's selling on 5 ringgit, 10 ringgit Solidarity. Please feel free to get a copy of yourself. And also we are various booklets. I think the Peter Taft booklet, which Yuva already introduced. And so please do talk to our comrades over at the booth there just to understand a bit more about materials. For those who have already bought our materials, we thank you very, very much. And there will be new materials coming up. As participants can see that there's a surge of membership in our party. And with that, we can expect more materials coming up in a very near future as well. And besides monetary donation, we're asking for in-kind donation as well. So anyone who's got an old laptop, you've got books, you've got furniture you would like to give us, we would be very, very happy to get that. We do have a form, which is actually here. We do have here, and there's a link right here, and you can just take a picture of it. Actually, we did give you a A4 copy of the financial appeal. Everything's inside. So you can just fill up the Google form and just drop whatever you want to give us. That would be great. And finally, just to end it, Reformasi is dead. Help build the revolutionary voice of the socialist workers and youth. Help turn this office into a center of organization and the class struggle. Help us close RM 17,500 ringgit. Help us build the socialist struggle. Thank you very much.